Hello and good Wednesday evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us tonight at 6:30. Well, some rain is starting to fall across northern Michigan. Let's turn things over to our chief meteorologist, Joe Charlevoix. Joe, can we expect this rain to continue the rest of the night, and how heavy will it be?
Yeah, I think so. Most areas will have a pretty steady rain through the night tonight. As far as how heavy it will be, it depends where you're at. But the further south you go, the more likely you're going to see an inch or two of rain, especially, you draw a line, we like to do this a lot. Alpena to Traverse City, south of there is where the heaviest of the rain will fall tonight. But it'll be out of here. It may be raining a little bit still in the morning, a little break. And then I think the other story coming up, Maya, is we're going to go from not just where it's been cool to warm, but to hot coming up late weekend. So we'll have a look at that too, and just how warm it's going to get.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe. We'll check back in with him after our first commercial break. But let's start with our top story tonight. A new cell phone tower in Benzie County has certainly stirred up some debate. Now, two communities will head to the courtroom to defend their decision to allow the tower's construction. So the city of Frankfort built the tower on land that they own in Crystal Lake Township. Crystal Lake Township's Zoning Board of Appeals said since another government entity owns that land, the township cannot enforce their zoning rules on the property. Our Allie Baxter has been following this story, and she has an update on where things stand now.
Right now, I'm sure my relatives are all spinning in their graves over what's taking place.
Terry Mickham is the great-grandson of Elwyn Henry Bellows, the namesake of this city of Frankfort Park, located in the boundaries of Crystal Lake Township. As Terry explains, the Bellows have a rich history in Frankfort. His great-grandfather gave a lot to the community, and that benevolence continued after his death in 1936.
His wife and the three daughters decided that they wanted to give a piece of property in his name to the city of Frankfort for the people to use for recreational purposes, to be able to enjoy.
Fast forward 87 years later, and the park is still here, with a notable addition on the hill, a 195-foot cell tower. The tower's construction approval has been contested by nearby homeowners. Crystal Lake Township claims they have no say what's done with the property since it's deeded to the city of Frankfort. Previously, the city superintendent told UpNorthLive the township has a permitted allowable use for cell towers on property owned by local units of government. But none of this sits right with Terry.
This property was meant to be used as recreational use only, not to be used for commercial industrial development, not for something that the city of Frankfort can make money off from. It was a gift to the people, not to be used commercially.
This is the November 1938 deed we first showed you in January. Since then, attorneys located a later deed from September 1948. The difference? This deed notes the park request is perpetual in nature, meaning continuous or unending.
I would like to see the tower removed, the property restored to a natural state, but I would love to see some walking paths put through the woods there. Maybe put in some benches so people could actually walk up through the area comfortably, sit, and enjoy that piece of the property so it's just not being ignored.
Terry says he's standing up for the wishes of his family and joining the lawsuit against the city of Frankfort for allegedly violating the restricted use of the property by entering into a lease agreement with APC Towers.
Then if they aren't willing to abide by what the original deed said, then they need to, I would otherwise see the property returned to the family, and then we talked about giving it to the township if the township would take it over. This is what the family wished for. This was the gift of why it was given. I wish they would be honorable and do the right thing here.
That was Allie Baxter reporting, and Allie did reach out to the attorney representing the city of Frankfort. He says the city was served the complaint against them, but they have not filed a formal response back yet. Our next story takes us to Grand Traverse County, where the first case of measles has been confirmed since 2019. That is according to the Grand Traverse County Health Department and MDHHS. Health officials say the resident with measles contacted the disease with an out-of-state traveler who had the disease. There are currently no known public exposures related to this specific case. The health department says It did contact anyone who may have been directly or indirectly exposed. Measles symptoms include high fever, runny nose, and a red blotchy rash that usually starts on the face. And doctors with Munson Healthcare say the best way to stay safe from measles is to get vaccinated.
No vaccine is 100% perfect, but the measles vaccine is very effective in keeping you from getting very sick with the measles. And like many vaccines, if you get a vaccine and then years later you were to get that illness, you may still get it, but you will get it in a much more mild fashion than if you hadn't been immunized in the first place.
And the Grand Traverse County Health Department will host a walk-in clinic for measles vaccines Friday from 8:30 to 11:30 a.m. and from 1 until 4 p.m. And our Cody Bear spoke with that Munson Healthcare doctor earlier today. He is joining us live now from our content center. And Cody, do we know if the person who was confirmed to have measles, were they vaccinated?
We do not know that information yet. So unfortunately, I can't, share that yet, but eventually we may and, continue looking into it.
Sure. And after talking to the doctor, I'm sure some people already know this, but how can you get measles? How is it spread?
Yeah, so it can be spread face to face or, through the air. And that's what makes it really, really contagious is the different ways it can be spread. The health department said that the virus can stay in the air for up to 2 hours after the infected person has left. So that's one of the reasons why it is very, very contagious. The doctor I spoke to said that it's the most contagious virus that they've seen other than COVID. So it is very contagious. And that's one of the reasons why is there are plenty of ways to spread it, including through the air, even if the person's left a long time ago.
Wow. And what does the recovery process look like for someone who does have measles?
Yeah, we didn't talk too much about, what that recovery process looks like in full past, that positive case. So I don't want to talk too much on that without having the time to really go too in depth with the doctor just yet on that one.
Gotcha. So do we know, though, I guess this might be a little repetitive, so I'm sorry if you also don't know this, but any long-term health effects if you do?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some other things that you did talk to the doctor about?
Yeah. More of that, just how contagious it is. He said that some of the symptoms that you have sometimes and most of the time don't show up until 7 to 14 days after exposure. So that's, 2 weeks after exposure that you're not even getting some of these symptoms. And that's another reason why it can be so contagious because you don't know that you have it for a really long time. And some of those symptoms he mentioned, and, you mentioned it as well, is it's a lot of stuff that you see with a common cold. But he said some of the indicators that it could be, more than the common cold and could be something like measles is that rash that typically starts on your face and then it can start to move down the body. And even more so than that, he said that it's not always itchy, but sometimes can be, but it's not usually super itchy. And then he said one of the biggest indicators that it's, more than the cold and could be something like measles is a very high fever. So, you might have a fever of the 100 to 101. He said once it gets to that 103 and 104 part, it might be a little bit more than that.
And so if someone does have similar symptoms and they think they may have measles, what should they do?
Yes. So his biggest thing that I spoke to Dr. Santangelo about was call ahead. And it is more of that, we don't want to continue spreading it by just walking into the doctor's office and saying, hey, I might have measles. I should probably get tested. He said, call with a healthcare provider first, and you can ask questions in that way. We've talked about before, Munson Healthcare has an Ask a Nurse hotline. So you can call first and say, hey, these are some of these symptoms that I'm having. I'm worried that me or my child might have measles. And then we can talk about the proper, steps to take. That's not always just go to the doctor. It's a way that we can make sure it's isolated so it doesn't continue to spread as you go in.
Anything else that the doctor said that you want to mention, Cody?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that walk-in vaccination clinic because really one of the biggest things that Dr. Santangelo talked about was you heard him say that vaccines aren't always 100% in stopping you from getting measles, but it can help. And then if you get measles later, the vaccine does help with making the symptoms and the disease a little bit more mild. So those walk-in clinics that are Friday, those are a pretty big deal. So that's something that, the doctor wanted to push, and I want to push as well.
Sure, and that walk-in clinic that you mentioned is happening in Grand Traverse County, but I'm sure other county health departments do similar walk-in clinics. So maybe just check with your health department
Absolutely.
if you want to take part in that as well. All right, Cody, thank you so much for joining us for more on that. We really appreciate it. We do have one more pretty interesting story to share with you before we take a quick break. So a Northern Michigan bear is probably out enjoying his evening tonight without a lid stuck around his neck. Now that might seem a little odd, but when you consider what this specific bear has dealt with for the past 2 years, it is a pretty major upgrade. Here is Mark Gillette with that full story.
We have a very robust bear population in Michigan.
And because of that, it's not that uncommon to catch a glimpse of a black bear around these here parts.
This really was the result of local landowners having trail cameras out.
Bears, not that unusual, but this image caught on a Montmorency trail camera stood out.
2 years ago, there was a cub bear. This bear has a cub that ended up getting its head stuck in a blue 55-gallon plastic drum lid.
And when the property owners saw it, they spoke up.
They alerted local wildlife staff, and it started a kind of a hunt for it over the next 2 years.
For 2 years, the bear lived its life with that blue lid wrapped tightly around its growing neck.
Couldn't have been enjoyable to have the lid around its neck.
For 2 years, sporadically, someone would report seeing the bear.
We were kind of behind the bear the whole time.
Until this spring, a quick call from an alert property owner.
They alerted us right away.
And a quick response by the DNR.
We were able to catch the bear pretty much right away after the trap was set.
Caught and then finally freed from that darn lid.
I think one of the wildlife technicians had ran to Home Depot that morning and got all sorts of bolt cutters and other tools to make sure that we had everything we needed to be able to get that lid off.
The bear checked out pretty healthy.
Certainly had some pretty significant scarring, had an abscess as well that appeared to be caused by the lid.
Having spent enough of its life with something around its neck and due to its injuries, no tracking collar for this bear.
It was outfitted with an ear tag, so if it shows up on trail camera anywhere else, we'll be able to, kind of keep tabs on it that way.
The bear back in the woods tonight, lid free, but a reminder to all of us when it comes to bear baiting barrels or any container that might find its way into close proximity to a bear's head.
The holes that are cut in the barrels or the bait container have to be either less than 1 inch or 1 inch or less in diameter, or 22 inches and greater in diameter. So basically trying to remove that slot where a bear or another animal that might be visiting that bait site could potentially get caught.
All right, let's take a look at our question of the day related to bears. Are bear sightings becoming more common where you live? Scan the QR code on your screen right now where you can vote. 71% as of right now are saying yes, they are becoming more common where they live. And you can also go over to our Facebook page to leave a comment. And some people are leaving pictures of different bears that they have seen in their yards. So if you want to do that as well, that is certainly encouraged. We will take a look at the live results and your comments toward the end of the show, but we are going to take a quick little pause right now. Coming up next, we will check back in with Chief Meteorologist Joe Charlevoix. He will have much more on this upcoming storm, what we can expect in the overnight hours and tomorrow, and a look ahead to that mini heat wave. All of that straight ahead.
I'm Jada Johnson from Big Boys TV, and the Fish and Game Report is sponsored by Johnson's Propane.
A pretty wet evening across much of northern Michigan. Let's turn things back over to our chief meteorologist, Joe Charlevoix. Joe, how long will this rain stick around for?
Yeah, well, pretty much most of the night tonight. Some areas are still kind of waiting on the rain, actually, but other areas have had off and on rain through the day. It's going to rain most of the night. But then by mid-morning tomorrow, most of that will come to an end, with this system at least. So let's go to Petoskey, and yeah, it's raining there, 66 degrees. Our Holiday Inn Express and Suites camera, that's US 131 there in Emmett County. And you can see the rain. And with the clouds around, it's not all that warm today. It's 66, the current temperature there. Here's the old weather map tonight. Let's show you that. And we have two things to show you. If you look near Chicago, you see that low pressure system. That's what's bringing the rain to our area. There's been some severe weather, but it's thankfully for us, it's been way south of us in Indiana, Illinois, far southern Michigan. We're going to mainly get rain out of that. And then the second thing to show you is that if you look north of Lake Superior, we have a cold front. That drops in tomorrow evening. That's a completely separate system, but it may bring in the chance for a few showers and thunderstorms late tomorrow. Here's radar, kind of the broad look. Number of severe thunderstorm watches, tornado watches. In fact, to the south of us, that's where a lot of this has been. You can see this band of thunderstorms tonight from Indiana working across southern Michigan tonight, especially there around Jackson, south of Lansing. Meanwhile, back in our region, we've had some showers and thunderstorms, but again, the rain's been a lot less. By the way, every one of those squares you see in this, there's a lot of them. That's where we've had some damaging winds or large hail south of us down in Indiana, in Illinois through the day today. Back home, there's the rain south of us, Grand Rapids. And then as we head up toward Big Rapids, Manistee, Ludington, you can see some of the rain. Then pockets of heavy rain here. We just showed you the Petoskey cam, but you can see that. Much of Charlevoix County, northern Leelanau County seeing that. And here around Newberry, we've had a few showers popping up as well. What will happen overnight tonight, this rain will continue. Right there, that's the middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock, wet. That departs. We get a nice break in the afternoon. The sun should come out. And then remember that cold front up north of Lake Superior? Well, look what that does. It kicks off a few showers and storms. Primarily, it looks like maybe south of Traverse City tomorrow evening. You see the clock there. That's 7:15 tomorrow night. So that's, we'll look at that. That won't be as widespread, the rain. And then Friday, maybe a couple of passing showers during the day Friday. The heaviest rain will fall south of a Traverse City Alpena line, where we could see 1 to 2 inches of rain. Almost all of that will be overnight tonight, this evening through tonight into very early tomorrow morning. Hot weather then in the forecast, especially the 2 hot days, are kind of looking at a mini heat wave, will be Sunday and Monday. By the way, the first day of summer is Friday. And then you can see some rain and storms north Friday morning into Saturday. That's the leading edge of the heat. And yeah, Maya, we're looking at upper 80s to mid 90s in spots Sunday and Monday. So it's going to be a pretty hot stretch, at least for a couple days.
All right, Joe. Well, thank you so much for that. We are going to take another quick break, but don't go anywhere just yet. We are continuing our Exploring Michigan series straight ahead. Henry Ford is known, of course, for putting the world on wheels. He built the Ford Model T by using a moving assembly line and forever changed the manufacturing of cars. But the auto industry was not the only thing that Ford had a passion for. He loved history, and most importantly, he loved preserving that history. In 1929, Greenfield Village was founded, and in tonight's Exploring Michigan, Courtney Bennett takes us there.
It's a living history museum right here in Dearborn, and you can explore more than 300 years of American history. It's the sights and sounds of Greenfield Village, from the locomotive to the historic Model T cars. The buildings like Thomas Edison's Menlo Park.
So there's a lot of history sort of crashing together, and that's a cool thing.
He's spent 4 decades working here. Jim Johnson knows just about everything you need to know about Greenfield Village. And when you ask him his favorite part,
It's hard to pick, but just the overall experience that people can have out here is, I think, my favorite thing.
with so much history inside, there's even immersive experiences like glass making.
Laying polishing to make sure there's no sharp edge on the bottom.
There are more than 80 acres to explore. While the focus has been the 19th century, they've expanded into the 20th century.
We recently added some new buildings to the collection, which is fairly unusual.
If you make a trip out here to Greenfield Village this summer, you won't be able to see this property just yet. It's being restored. However, this is just one piece of history, traveling more than 800 miles from Selma, Alabama to right here in Dearborn. And this house has ties to Martin Luther King Jr.
The house itself is over 100 years old, and actually 3 families of African-American dentists lived in the house, all connected either by blood or marriage. There was a kind of a through thread there. But the last family was the Jackson family, and through Mrs. Jackson's family, they were close friends with Martin Luther King and his wife, Coretta.
Johnson tells me King spent a lot of time in the 50s at this home when he was doing lectures at the university. Then the call came for him to go to Selma.
Because of the rising civil rights activities, focused mostly on voting rights, that was his logical choice to really set up as his home base. So from January through spring of 1965, he was there quite a bit.
A daughter of the Jackson family reached out to the village.
She wasn't sure what was going to happen to the history there of the house and its objects, because many of the things that were there in 65 were still in the house.
It became clear the house needed to come to Dearborn to be preserved. And next year, you'll be able to walk inside and learn all about it.
And we'll be restoring it to look as it did in 1965.
You'll still have to wait until June of 2026 to see this house. But there's still so much to see and do. As your summer travel plans get underway, don't forget to add a trip to explore Greenfield Village to your list. And maybe you'll learn something about American history you didn't know before. For Exploring Michigan, I'm Courtney Bennett.
All right, one final break, but straight ahead, we'll take a look at the live results for our question of the day and some of your comments.
Salon services are furnished by Epiphany Advanced Academy in East Acme.
All right, we have a very important question of the day today. I regretted that as soon as I said it. Are bear sightings becoming more common where you live? A majority of people, 72%, are saying yes, only 28% no. Over on Facebook, we have a few comments. Fred says, we have 6 different ones throughout the week. Up until this year, we used to only see 1 or 2 all summer. And the Michigan DNR has said that there are more bear, especially in the northern lower peninsula, as bear in the upper peninsula have been expanding more south. So if you are seeing more, you're not crazy. It is indeed a fact that there are more here in the northern lower peninsula. All right, that'll do it for Up North Live Unscripted on this Wednesday evening. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.